Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist. We missed you. Did you miss us? I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Mike.
Yes, and because you hear that third voice, that means we have reached our final episode of the current year that we are unpacking. That is 1983. So we're going to get Mike's favorite song and album of the year, my favorite album of the year. Now, Cheryl's been carrying a lot of the weight on the last couple of episodes we record. You can kick back, relax.
That is true. I've been doing so much work.
Now, Cheryl, you and Mike dropped a bombshell on me. Mike's going to pick his favorite album and song, but apparently he has changed the song he's going to pick, so I'm totally in the dark. I don't know what song that Michael is going to choose for his final song. Before we get to that, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I've got two songs to add to the list before we wrap things up. And one of them, I've been wanting to get more country on the list, and I kind of had this song as a placeholder, thinking, oh, I'll find something else that I like better. Nothing's really knocked it off. I don't know that it's going to stay there, but I'm going with Islands in the Stream, the Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton duet that was on Kenny Rogers' album that year, Eyes That See in the Dark. The interesting thing about this song, so, we did a whole show on the Bee Gees a ways back, and we've talked about how the Bee Gees quickly fell out of favor as 79 turned into 80, the disco backlash following the disco demolition night in Chicago. And then they put out an album in 81. They couldn't get arrested. And people think that was kind of the end of the line for the Bee Gees. Well, no, they had the good sense to keep putting out music. They just didn't put their name on it. It was a brilliant maneuver on the part of the brothers Gibb. And it started really in 1980, a little slow out of the gate. They produced a Jimmy Ruffin solo album, former member of the Temptations. It didn't really do much, but then the Barry Gibb, Barbra Streisand duet album, Guilty, huge smash record in 1980 with two big hit singles, the title track and Woman in Love. A couple years later, you get Dionne Warwick's album, Heartbreaker, her biggest hit since the Backrack David days. She'd had hit songs in that interim period, but nothing as big as Heartbreaker. And the title track was a contender for a single for me to put on the playlist for 1982. Now in 83, they're working with Kenny, who kind of sought out the brothers Gibb, looking for songs. And when you bring in the Gibbs, you're getting the whole package. It's songwriting, production, playing,
vocals,
backup vocals. Islands in the Stream initially was a song that they had written intending to give it to Diana Ross. It was more of an R&B vein. Robin once jokingly said, no, they were initially going to offer it to Marvin Gaye, but he turned out to be dead, so that wasn't going to work. Well, I think Robin kind of had his...
I think he has dates a little mixed up there.
His memory timeline was a little screwed up. Yeah, Marvin Gaye wasn't dead for another year or so. But they did write the song with a Marvin Gaye kind of feel in the composition. So it was more of an R&B number. And initially, Kenny just wasn't getting it down. He didn't like it, didn't have a feel for it. And I guess Dolly's recording in the same studio, and they had the bright idea to bring her in to spice it up, and the magic happened. All of a sudden, Kenny's like, we got the sound. Their harmonies were great. Kenny sings his butt off on this. And, at the time, I certainly wasn't a fan of the song at the time because I didn't want to have anything to do with country music, and I thought it was corny. And
yeah, I don't even think of it that much as country. I just think of it as corny.
Yes. And it is kind of, but in a good way. Yeah. And your word that you like to use, and it's a perfect word for this song, sticky. It's just sticky as hell. That you get that in your mind, and it ain't going anywhere for a long time. And it was
played a lot. I mean, it is one of those songs that just felt like you really couldn't get away from it.
Well, it's a crossover sensation. It topped the pop charts. It topped the country charts. It was the biggest selling country song of 83. It topped the adult contemporary charts.
Yeah.
You're getting radio crossover, so it's being played to death on Top 40, on country radio, on soft rock, adult contemporary. It's everywhere. It was inescapable. And those two became quite the item. I mean, they struck up a really deep and profound friendship. There were always rumors over the years that I think they were kind of coyly stoking the rumor mill that there might be a romance between the two. Kenny, I think, jokingly...
Dolly's married.
Dolly's famously married to a guy that Carl Dean, who passed away recently.
Yeah.
Since 66, they were married. Long time. And he's always wanted to stay out of the limelight, doesn't want to have anything to do with it, which I think is kind of cool. Kenny, I think, jokingly mentioned, yeah, well, she said no to me. I don't think he was serious, but who knows the real story there?
Who knows
You know,
what's up with Kenny?
he had 5 marriages, so. But anyway, I've grown to like this song a lot. Any song that sticks in your head that hard, you got to give it
It
props.
is very sticky. I like the fact that the Bee Gees are involved and, wrote the song. And the rest of Kenny's album, actually, that this came from, has some really good stuff on it. What really elevates the album is the Bee Gees' backup vocals. I
Yeah.
mean, you hear it on the songs and just the songwriting. I mean, they're great songwriters. They know how to write a catchy tune, and they just continue to do it over and over and over again. There was another song, This Woman was a top 40 hit, and I do
Yep.
remember that song.
The lead track on the album. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a couple ballads that are really good. It's funny because I actually kind of equate Islands in the Stream more as Dolly Parton. It was on her greatest hits album, but it originated on Kenny's album. But there was some kind of a licensing issue, and they actually can't put it on the album on the streaming version. So it's only on Dolly's greatest hits.
Yeah, the album was his first for RCA Records. He had switched from Liberty to RCA. In fact, another duet that had come out in January of '83, and another really great song that I considered for the playlist was his duet with Sheena Easton, We've Got Tonight, to cover the Bob
Yeah,
Stevens song. Great duet. Sheena Easton, wonderful singer. So I think, part of the reason I'm sticking with this song, we were very close to putting a Kenny song and a Dolly song on the playlist earlier. They didn't quite make it. Kenny Rogers with The Gambler in '78, Dolly with 9 to 5 in 1980. So now we could put them on together with this one.
they deserve to be on there.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know what the licensing situation is, but I think Sony Music owns the rights to the song now. So it really only shows up on Dolly compilations, not on Kenny compilations.
Yep. Then the Bee Gees did a version of it themselves too. There's a live version that came out like in '97.
Well, and we talked about this when we talked about the Bee Gees, is the country influence in their sound really goes back to the early days. There was always a strong element of country music in their sound. And I remember when I first started picking up on that, I thought, God, Barry Gibb should really do a country record. And then, like, weeks later, he comes out with his country duets album where he's singing songs with all
Oh
these
yeah.
contemporary country stars. But a lot of their songs really work in a country arrangement.
And a lot of the songs on this album are not country. I mean, there's really only a few
Yeah.
that really kind of have that country twang to them, and the Gatlin brothers back him on those songs, so
Yeah.
they really sound country. But I think that that's one of the things that the fact that they can write for a primarily country artist. I mean, Kenny Rogers was in the first edition, which in the '60s, which was more like a pop band, and that's kind of the vein they were writing in more. But the fact that they could do that and cross over to the country charts also just speaks to how amazing they are as songwriters.
Another interesting aspect of this album, maybe why it doesn't sound very country, is when Kenny got the demos for this record. I mean, every song's written by Gibbs, and it's their production crew, Carl Richardson and Albie Galutin in the studio, along with the Gibb brothers. They play and sing on it. But when Kenny laid his vocals on the tracks, he pretty much followed Barry Gibb's vocals to the letter, singing in his style. And you could even hear him doing that wide vibrato that Barry does. And Kenny actually does it quite well. Mike, you have a take on Islands in the Stream?
Well, it was one of the 350 songs that I was reviewing for 1983.
So it made the
But
cut of 350, huh?
yeah, although it didn't last very long in there. Speaking of country music, I wasn't into country music really in 1983 at all.
Oh, I would have been anti-country. Being a small town middle class kid, that was like that's music for the hicks and the farmers. We didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I wasn't opposed to it. I just didn't listen to it all that much. But going back and listening to some of the country hits, 83 is when it started to break out, and there are some pretty good country singles from that year. The one that got me the most, though, was George Strait, Amarillo by Morning.
Oh, great, great artist. Yeah. Wonderful singer.
Yeah, and then Ricky Skaggs was
Love Ricky
just
Skaggs.
starting
Yeah.
starting out at that time, but Also, Reba McEntire, Can't Even Get the Blues No More. That's a really good country song from that year.
The only country songs I would know at all from this era is anything that crossed over to pop. And there were quite a few, like Eddie Rabbit or stuff like that. You know, you're starting to get more of that country crossover, I think.
Yeah.
Eddie Rabbit put out consistently really good singles in this
Yeah.
era.
But George Strait, Reba McEntire, they're definitely country. I mean, they're like full
Yes,
on country. Yeah.
Yep.
absolutely. But I've been in such a a Merle Haggard rabbit hole for years now. And George Strait really fits into that classic country singer mold.
Well, and there's Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson had an album that came out this year.
Poncho and Lefty, yeah. But yeah, so country got a little bit scorned for me at the time. It would be a few years down the road before I really developed an appreciation for it. And now it's something I listen to quite a bit. All right, Mike, I'm ready for your bombshell here. Now, initially, you had picked a song that I was not familiar with, and listening to it, it didn't spark any recall for me either. And that was a song by The Call.
Yes, The Walls Came Down. One of the things that I found in going through singles and stuff, and like all of these shows, it's trying to balance between listening to stuff and being impressed by it as I am today, and trying to remember what I was impressed by and felt back in 1983 and the play between those two. And I do remember when I was reviewing 1983 and found that The Walls Came Down came out in 83, I go, oh, I loved that song so much. And I re-listened to it and thought, yeah, this could be the song that I want to talk about,
It
because
is a really cool song.
yeah, there's at least, I'd say, 25 to 50 songs. They're all very close to being my favorite song. You've talked about some of them already. Echo and the Bunnyman and the Cutter is one that just, I mean, if you were to put a gun to my head, I'd probably say that's my favorite.
But we already took it.
But
That was our first 83 episode. We did that one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
But The Call, The Walls Came Down is pretty interesting. And it had kind of this semi-political about the world and politics and the powers that be, Russia and the US. That song is just a really catchy one. And the band was very interesting. Michael Bean, who's the main guy and the lead singer, he actually, his son is in Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, and he was Black Rebel Motorcycle Club's manager for a number of years.
Died pretty young.
He died while he was on tour with him. He had a heart attack.
So that was going to be my song, but the more I listened to it, the more I thought, well, the rest of the Call stuff is like,
Yeah, the problem with that is that the whole album gets really tiring because Michael Bean has this vocal style that's like talking, which is cool in that one song. But after a while, it just kind of gets old. That's how I felt about it.
I didn't find that song to be immediately accessible either. That's one you probably have to listen to a few times for it to sink in.
It has a really cool riff, and that's what drives that song, is that riff. But it just keeps going over and over throughout the song, and it really doesn't change. So
yeah. So I thought, well, let me review. There's other songs here, and then actually I said this a few months ago, and then I reiterated it a few weeks ago, and that is, has anyone done anything about Blister in the Sun and Violent Femmes yet? And Cheryl said no. And I said, that's going to be my song. Blister in the Sun by Violent Femmes. That was one, once again, taking me back to 1983. When I first heard that song and that album, it just hit all the right notes. It was
nothing else sounded like that.
Yeah,
it was this kind of folky punk that actually, it kind of started a whole thing that became that kind of folk punk thing. They were the first that then bred groups like the Meat Puppets and Camper Van Beethoven and Billy Bragg and
Yeah.
overseas. And the song resonated not just in America, it was everywhere. And what's funny is I'm calling it my top single of the year, and it wasn't even a single. It never was released as a single.
That's kind of one of those songs like the Romantics, What I Like About
Yep.
You.
Yep.
Like everybody
Yep.
knows that song, but
It's
it wasn't a hit, but it's
Yeah.
just one of those songs that it's just kind of in the general population. Now everybody knows it.
Yep.
It's on a million 80s compilations.
Yes.
It's used in movies that are set in the 80s. And yeah, you're right. It's one of those songs that people would be surprised to know it wasn't a single. But then again, that would have been a pretty transgressive single for 1983 in America.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how stripped down it is. And back then, the other group that was stripping down to that, a trio where it was stand-up bass, was the Stray Cats.
And the drummer just plays a snare drum,
Yep.
like the drummer for the Violent Femmes.
Yep. The difference is all in Brian Setzer, who is a really great guitarist and a really good crooner.
And that's rockabilly. Like that's
Yes,
full on
yeah.
rockabilly. Yeah. The
But-
vibe, the look, everything.
Yeah, but back then I remember thinking these bands are stripping down instead of being the arena rock acts with all these keyboards and synths and everything. It was refreshing. And that song and the album was played over and over.
I'm a big fan of this album. I've loved this album like probably since college because it's a college album. It's a college rock radio staple. And Blister in the Sun, of all the songs on the album, I would say is the most accessible, just kind of pop rock song. It works more on that level where the other songs, a lot of them have that more of a male angst outlook to them.
Yeah, Added Up is a
Added
great
Up
song.
especially, yeah.
But the lore of Blister in the Sun, Gordon Gano, he wrote it in high school, actually. And it was the first song that the band performed. And it's the song that actually helped break up the band. And
Break up the band? What do you mean?
they've had a lot of legal battles between each other throughout the years.
Oh.
And it was used in Grosse Point Blank. It was requested for Grosse Point Blank, and it turned out that they had thrown away the masters. So they redid it in a slicker version that's called Blister 2000.
I
And-
hate when they do that. It's like Let My Love Open the Door 96 or like Don't Stand So Close to Me
Yep.
86, remember?
And they recorded it and it was just too slick. And then so
Yeah.
they tried to re-record it as like they originally did. And the only way you can get these are on a promo CD single that came out around that time.
So they
And-
lost the masters to this, huh?
Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Seek out original vinyl.
Yeah. That song and really the whole album is kind of like a timepiece. That's why, like, when you say that he wrote it in high school, this is an album that has to be discovered during that time in your life, for it to actually really resonate, I think. And either high school or like early
Yeah.
college.
And that's what the song's all about, is that time in your life where everything is weird. You don't feel right. You feel like you got big hands and you stain the sheets. And you don't even know why.
You guys might, but yeah.
Well,
No comment.
originally, this was actually originally written for a female singer and from a female point of view.
But it's a female point of view or it's a female like singing about a guy.
Different things have been said about.
Okay.
But the one thing that people think that it's about is masturbation.
But it's not.
But it's not. Gordon has said, I didn't even think about that.
Well, I think staining my sheets is probably a reason why people might
That's-
think that, but
but he said
that could happen in
that's-
other ways too.
Yes.
I just want to say this, masturbation, totally normal, totally healthy. If you're getting a blister, you might want to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially doing it in the sun. You don't wanna be out in
No.
public. But it is one of those songs that just got passed down because it wasn't a single, it didn't have much airplay, it was a word of mouth thing that just kept on going for a couple decades, actually.
Hey, we play this song in my band, and it is one of our most popular songs.
I'm an outlier here. I mean, my I'm one of the
And
few people who's into music and particularly into, alternative college rock music of this era that's just never cared for them, never liked that album, never liked that song so much. It's just never connected with me. And I tried. I listened, my wife's got everybody likes. I tried listening to it a couple of times. I still just can't get into it. Probably mainly about his voice and just,
yeah,
Oh, he's got a whiny voice,
yeah.
yeah,
yeah, and I can see that. He definitely does have one of those voices that if it bothers you, it really bothers you.
yeah. When you couple it with the transgressive themes, and it just I find it grating. It's just never happened for. And I haven't listened to their later stuff. Didn't they really change their sound
Yeah,
pretty
they
dramatically?
well, not dramatically, but they changed their styling and his voice became a problem. I mean, it just didn't work. They tried to do some kind of jazz type things, more jazzy type stuff, more country type of stuff, more rock type of stuff, and they never really did. And I can see your point, but for that album and for that time,
And this is the only album of theirs that I like, and it's because it is an album of the time and of the moment. If it came out now, I probably would be appalled by it, to be honest. But there's something about the fact that it came out in the 80s and it just feels like of that time because I was a teenager then too. Now I wasn't as, I wasn't in high school or like Mike was where you were like the perfect age for that
I
album
actually it
really to
was my
make
first
sense.
year in college.
I didn't discover it until later till I was in college, but it just feels like one of those it's kind of just this coming of age sort of album. But I also get what you're saying too, Matt, about the vocals and yeah.
I tried. I tried. We went to see them live not too long ago. They played a show at the zoo here in Portland with Echo and the Bunnymen.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, still
Hmm.
didn't like it.
How were they? No. Didn't take, huh?
Yeah, Echo and the Bunnymen was great, but no, I just have never been able to get into Violent Femmes. We should mention they're from Milwaukee too. I don't know if they're
Yep.
going to have any other artists from Milwaukee on our playlist, but
And actually I think that this fits in well, moving on to next, to your album.
to my album or his album?
Your album.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, with the more acoustic flavor to it,
Well, and we're getting into the era where college radio is
right?
a big deal and bands are gaining popularity through live music and college radio. And that's something that really starts to happen right now where you weren't thinking of bands that were popular coming out of these cities and they're coming out of college towns.
Well, a lot of people had never heard of Athens, Georgia until REM hit the music scene. Their first single comes out in 1981, Radio Free Europe, backed by Sitting Still on the Hibtone, HIB-tone label. A guy named Johnny Hibbert helped finance the recording of those songs. They actually had to give up their publishing rights to Johnny in order to get that release, something they had to go back and rectify later. REM had formed in 1980 in Athens, Georgia, which is the location of the University of Georgia. All four members of the band, lead singer Michael Stipe, lead guitarist Peter Buck, bassist Mike Mills, drummer Bill Berry, were attending the college there. Actually, Peter Buck was not attending the college. He was a little older than the other guys, but he was working at a record store in Athens. None of them were natives of Athens. In fact, only one was born in Georgia, and that was Stipe, and he spent a lot of his early years outside the state of Georgia. Two of them are from military families. Stipe's father was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, I want to say, and flew reconnaissance helicopter missions in Vietnam. Mike Mills' father was in the Marines. So both of them moved around a bit as a result. Stipe was born in Georgia, but went to high school in Illinois, actually in outside of Collingwood, Illinois, which is a suburb of St. Louis. Mike Mills, born in California, but relocated to Georgia not too long after that. His father's business took him eventually to Macon, Georgia. Peter Buck, another California native. All of them came from these, pretty solidly middle class families, all had stable childhoods with educated, supportive parents, and all went on to get college educations. Not all of them finished their degrees. In fact, once the band started taking off, and it happened fast when these guys eventually did get together. I mean, it was
Yeah.
basically two pairs, Stipe and Buck, had kind of started working together on songs, and then Mills and Barry, who initially were high school rivals in Macon, became friends once they discovered they had music in common, and they formed a formidable rhythm section. Mills is really the secret weapon in the band, and he's probably the best musician in the group.
Secret weapon with bass and backup vocals.
Bass, vocals, keyboards, and actually, he's probably the better guitarist. I mean, he actually had more lead guitar skills than Peter Buck. Peter Buck just kind of self-taught and didn't play, your usual lead style guitar, preferring instead to focus on rhythm and chording. And then what really kind of marked them out stylistically was his arpeggiated chords, where he's playing the single notes of the chord in order. And a lot of people attributed that style to the Byrds. He later said, no, it was really more the Soft Boys that influenced his guitar style. Kimberly Rue
Oh,
and Robin
yeah.
Hitchcock. And if you go back, again, a lot of, casual music fans who might tune into our podcast, probably not too familiar with the Soft Boys. It's pretty obscure. But the song that we had for 1980, Queen of Eyes, there's that same arpeggiated guitar style and the guitar riff on that. And
Jangly guitar.
right. And he played a Rickenbacker, which is another reason why they got compared to the Byrds quite a bit.
And I think that the jangly part is what people equate with the Byrds. It's just that jangly guitar
Well,
sound.
it's the Rickenbacker sound. It's the Rick sound.
Yeah.
And, Buck's playing a Rick. I mean, initially he was a telly guy. I mean, he worked in Walk Street Records in Athens. He'd have the Telecaster in his hands, constantly strumming without being amplified, just always working on it. But once they got together and were convinced to play their first show at a party, things happened very quickly. I mean, they just had a natural affinity for one another right off the bat. Michael Stipe and Peter Buck were already working on original songs. Barry and Mills had played in a high school band in Macon. They had started composing on their own as well. So they were the more experienced of the four musically. I mean, REM had a really solid rhythm backing. Once they started playing in Athens, things started to take off quickly. And they weren't the first band to break out of Athens. That was the B-52s, who had formed a couple of years earlier. And their first record came out in 79 on a major label. But they'd already become darlings in New York and toured around. But they were still very much a part of the scene. And that's part of the cool thing about, these college scenes. It's like there's, a lot of communality there. And a lot of these bands were friends. They weren't necessarily
Rivals.
It wasn't rivalrous. It was more, they were, glad for one another's success. So you had all these bands breaking out at the same time out of Athens. Pylon, Love Tractor, who also had an album in 83. Their album a few years later is definitely going to feature later on for me because I loved it. Got into it in college. There was a band called OOK, which featured a young Matthew Sweet and also Michael Stipe's sister. Linda.
Yep. And they had an album that came out in 83 as well.
Method Actors.
Yeah, Method Actors also had an 83 album.
Yeah.
All the ones that you just mentioned, I listened to all of their albums and I like them all. But it is kind of funny because really the two bands that became the biggest obviously were REM and the B-52s.
Yeah.
Those other bands really didn't make an impact at all. And maybe in retrospect, like Pylon, people know them more now than they did at the time just because they kind of got on a bunch of cool lists, of people that were citing them as influences.
Well, I think a lot of people got into REM and then got curious about bands like Pylon, and that's how they listened to them initially.
Yeah. But I mean, it was kind of touted as this music scene that was such a big deal. And because, there was that documentary that came out, I think it was in 1986, Athens, Georgia, Inside Out. But really, I mean, there really aren't any other bands that became big from that movement.
No, not big nationally.
But what did happen is that you now are seeing this college radio scene and college bands. These are people that are, they're college educated. Oftentimes, like they're coming from more stable backgrounds or more. So it's a totally different dynamic that's happening here. And they're kind of on the forefront of that.
Yeah. They had some things break their way early on that helped them quite a bit. I mean, first, again, all being educated, stable, supportive families. They had that going for them. So they had the brains, but they also had connections early on. Bill Berry had worked for a concert booking agency in Macon, started learning the business. In fact, when he went to UGA, he was thinking of maybe getting into the music business with a law degree and getting onto the business side of things. But he brought his drums with him just in case. And next thing you know, they've fallen in together, and wham, bam, things start taking off. They were popular. I mean, they were all, kind of comfortable in their own skin, confident guys, and they were socially adept. And they started getting people in their orbit who helped them a lot, including people with business acumen and legal acumen. Guys like Burtis Downs, Jefferson Holt, who became key associates of the band for years to come, helping them through the choppy waters of the music business, getting those initial contracts
And that's
recording deals
really,
signed.
really important. I mean, how many
Yes.
bands do you hear about who
So
sign these
important.
terrible contracts in the
Yes.
beginning when they're nobodies and then they're just regretting it forever?
So they were courted by major labels. They had an audition for RCA. They got a kind of, lukewarm offer from RCA for a EP, but they eventually go with the indie IRS. And the company that Bill Berry had worked for as a high school kid, he actually met Ian Copeland early on, long before he'd met the other guys in REM. Ian Copeland, of course, the Copeland family, Stuart Copeland, the drummer of the Police. Miles Copeland was the president of IRS Records. Ian Copeland eventually had a booking agency called FBI. So they had that key contact early on. And, they're learning things they need to know to avoid the pitfalls of the business. So they signed their deal with IRS Records, and part of the deal was they pretty much have creative control of what they're doing. But the record company wanted them to work with a producer named Stephen Hague on that first record, and it turned out to be a bad match. Hague produced a lot of hit records, but he wanted a more contemporary sound. He added a bunch of synths. The interesting thing about their attitude going into getting that first recording deal is they knew, and they talked about it as a group, as a collective. They basically had a list of things that we are not going to do. And one of the things, they're not going to get caught up in a lot of contemporary production techniques. They wanted a timeless sound that wasn't going to be pinned to the era. So they wanted to avoid the gated snare drums and the Yamaha DX7 synths or whatever, the hot new gadget was in recording studios.
Which was very prescient on their
Very
part
much, very much
because I
so.
mean that is so much of the music from this era is tainted because of the the technology of the time.
Yes.
They didn't want to make music videos, corny music videos like other bands do. Their videos were all very artistic and surreal.
And did not feature them.
No,
Most of the time they were not actually in the videos.
Michael Stipe refused to lip sync on television. They would only play live. They wouldn't do things where they had to go and lip sync to recordings. So they were a little bit of a tough band to handle for the record company who was looking for hits. IRS, it's an indie label, but they'd had big hits. They had the Go-Go's on that. They'd had multiple #1 records, and they felt like REM had the potential to shift those kind of units. Well, of course, they did have that potential. It would be years down the road before they hit that threshold. Their first EP, Chronic Town, they'd had that out in 82. But the first record comes out in April of 83. It's Murmur. It's got that unusual record cover with no pictures of the band on the cover. Just kind of mysterious, and people in the South would recognize what it was, but, who knew what kudzu was in most of the United States, this pervasive weedy vine that grows all throughout the South. So the difficult thing with this record, so, they put out the Hiptone single in 81. They recorded the EP with Mitch Easter, who had his own band, Let's Active. He's based in North Carolina.
Who had a song from 1983 that was almost on the playlist for me.
Oh, what song is that?
Every Word Means No.
Okay.
Great song.
They end up recording the EP with him. They have their failed experiment with Stephen Hague recording the song Catapult, which ended up on the record. But the record label said, okay, just give it a chance, work with the guy, and we'll see how it turns out. So they did Catapult with Stephen Egg. They hated the experience, hated the production on it, and then they did it with Mitch Easter, and the suit saw the light of day. So yeah, you guys are right. Your instincts prove to be right here. You can go ahead and record with these guys. And it was actually Mitch Easter and Don Dixon, who both have had estimable recording careers of their own. I know I've had Don Dixon's solo album, Triple E, for a long time. That's a really good record.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was a perfect match, as it turns out. You got a timeless guitar oriented record that sounded like very little else coming out in contemporary music in 1983. And honestly, there are any of 8 songs on that record that I could have chosen for the playlist. I mean, it's tough to
Yeah.
pull one. The obvious choice would be Radio Free Europe. They re recorded it for the LP. It's a much better sounding version on the LP than the original single.
And the flip side to that was Sitting Still, which also was re-recorded for Murmur.
Right.
Great song too.
That could have easily been a song choice off the record too. I mean, that
Yeah.
could have easily been a lead single. I went with the second single they released, and they released it in Europe, and then later on, when they put out their first greatest hits album, Eponymous, they released it as a single in the United States. It's called "Talk About the Passion."
Yep.
Mhm.
Would that be your song choice too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just that intro guitar riff. It's just so beautiful. Simple. So
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
The song is deceptively simple sounding. I mean, it's construction, it's not that simple, but it's a simple guitar riff that hooks you in right away. There are very few lyrics to the song. And
So
one of
you can understand
And you can
Michael's
actually
side.
yes, and this is
yeah,
about one of the only songs where you
Please.
can really understand the lyrics because there are very few and you can actually understand what he's saying.
Yep.
and when you learn what the song's about, you can it kind of does make sense. I mean, it's about hunger. Empty prayers, empty mouths, combien reaction. Okay, now he's using French in this. He took a French class. He just liked the sound of the French words. But combien du
Mhm.
temps, basically, I think it means like, isn't it about time? Something like that. But it's just a beautiful combien reaction. Empty prayers, empty mouths. Talk about
The line in this song to me is not
everyone
everyone can
can
carry
carry
the
the
weight
weight.
of the world. That's the one that hits me.
Now, when you're going from the pre-chorus to chorus, you get this massive guitars, and all the guitar players in the studio were pitching in. It was not only Buck, but Mike Mills and the 2 producers who are both guitar players as well, all play on this. Plus, there's a cello on it. They drafted in a cello player from the Charlotte Symphony Orchestra. Plays a beautiful cello on the chorus.
And once again, you get the great backup vocals from Mike Mills. The that's every song on this album is lifted by Mike Mills backup vocals.
Yeah,
But
it's a hell of a bass player too. I mean, he's just
melodic bass, jangly guitars, you couldn't ask for more, I think.
just a great guy. I mean, he was just
Our first date was going to the Gravity Bar in Seattle with Mike Mills and Peter Buck. Mike and I and maybe like 5 or 6 other people were there.
Yeah, we ended up sitting at the table with Peter Buck and Mike Mills, just us 4.
Yeah. Nice guys.
Pete
Peter
ended up
Buck's been around in Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, he moved there, and does he still live there?
I don't think so, but he bought the
Yeah.
crocodile. He ran the crocodile.
With his wife.
Yeah. He was always around in the 90s. I think Peter Buck definitely comes across as more of a cynical character
Yeah.
who, has a bit of an attitude, where Mike Mills is definitely more of a just, he's a nice guy.
One of the many things to like about REM, and I think I've said this before on the podcast, is a lot of my favorite bands are made up of record nerds. I mean, he is an uber record nerd. I mean, very, very knowledgeable.
Yep. And the covers that they do throughout their career, Superman by The Click, which was one of my favorite.
Yeah, that's on Life's Rich Pageant.
One-hit wonder. Yeah, one-hit wonder.
And guess who sings that one? Mike Mills. He sings lead on it.
Mike, had you heard that song before REM
Yes.
covered it?
Yeah.
And so you were a fan of the song prior to them releasing it?
Yeah, I did a dive at one point in high school where I went back and tried to find any song that had to do with superheroes. And that's how I found that song and found the single at like Golden Oldies and listened to it, and it just became this is so great.
What year did that come out?
68, 69, I think.
So does it kind of fit in? I don't think I've ever heard the original of it, to be honest with you. Does it kind of slot in with the bubblegum singles around that time?
It's
A
more
little.
bubblegummy than garage.
Yes, yeah. It's good, but not quite as good as.
He has a really whiny voice. It's like,
Yeah.
I am Superman. And it's more mellow. And
Yeah.
REM's version is definitely more rockin'. And I do
Mhm.
think it's cool that Mike Mills sings it because his voice does sound more like the original singer's voice, but their version is better.
They really escalated the art of the CD single during the CD boom, because their CD singles had these B-sides and extra tracks that were covers, them paying homage to their favorite bands, and they're just amazing covers.
Well, and when Dead Letter Office came out, which is B-sides, and
Yeah.
they do a cover of a Pylon song, crazy.
First time I ever heard Toys in the Attic was their cover.
Yep.
Love that album now. But yeah, they're all super into music. Peter Buck, though, is on another level. I mean, he was, a record store dude. It's just collector, super knowledgeable about everything, always on the cutting edge of what's new and hip. And I think both Buck and Stipe, when Patti Smith first came out with Horses, were immediately on board with the whole punk scene and what was happening in New York at the time. But yeah, they became the darling college band of the era. I mean, they were pretty much the number one band on college radio in the mid 80s. And they got that big exposure going on Letterman early on. They got an opening slot with the Police.
Yeah, in 1983. I mean, that's when the Police were at their height.
Right, which they hated doing, but they did it. It was one thing they kind of said they weren't going to do, but they made one exception, I think, just because the Copeland connection.
They had the connection.
Yeah. But they ended up playing Shea Stadium and JFK and these huge football stadiums, so they got their name out there early on that way. And it would be a few more years before they hit really the commercial pay dirt, and the switch to the major label precipitated that. But they were consistently gaining steam throughout the 80s and putting out highest quality music consistently.
And they put out an album every year between 83 and 87.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, if I didn't have Big Country holding a special place in my heart, this would have been my album of the year, because this album is just in my DNA. Like, I love this album so much. I mean, this is one of those where I've heard it so many times. I would never get tired of it. And I love every song. It's one of the best debut albums ever. I guess Chronic Town came out first, but that was an EP, so that wasn't like a full album. Between this and Reckoning, the album that came out in 84, it's always kind of a toss-up to me of which one I like most. I actually have decided I like Reckoning a little bit better because the last 4 songs on this album kind of drop off for me. But every song is just so amazing. And yes, it is impossible to discern at all, not only what Michael Stipe is singing about, but what he's actually singing. I mean, you just have no idea what he's trying to say.
And it was purposeful. I mean, he was kind of shy, but they wanted the lyrics not to be a focal point. They wanted every element of the band to be equal, and which was another brilliant move on their part early on. They shared the publishing. Every song was credited to the 4 members, and actually split 5 ways, because Jefferson Holt, the band manager, was treated like a 5th member. He got an equal share of all the revenue. So that was a smart move. But as far as the elements of their sound, they didn't want any one thing to stand out, and that included the vocals and the lyrics. So they mixed the vocals even with the instruments, and Michael's singing style was a little mumbly, and that was purposeful too. It was vague. His lyrics weren't linear. They didn't necessarily tell a literal story. They were impressionistic and poetic.
It's like John Anderson, where the sound of the words are more important than what the actual meaning of the words are together.
One of the things that cracked me up, I've been reading this great book about REM, came out last year. The name of this band is REM, by Peter Ames Carlin. So they're very aware of what they're doing. So they had people coming up to them and quoting song lyrics that weren't really the lyrics. And they would, as a joke, they would sing the lyrics that other people thought they were singing sometimes. So it was fluid that way.
It went so far, it's not even just that they didn't necessarily want to make the meaning of the song obvious, but even just the words themselves that he was actually singing. Yeah, like they could just be like, "Oh, sure, yeah, that's what I was singing. Yeah, that works too." Because it was so indistinguishable. You couldn't really tell what words he was actually saying, and some of them seemed like just made up words too.
Interesting too. They got an early break in going on the David Letterman show, Late Night with David Letterman, right after their first album coming. They're a pretty unknown band, so they do Radio Free Europe, which is the song that's probably best known off the record.
Yeah.
And then they do a second number, and it's a song that's off Reckoning that they haven't recorded yet. They didn't even have a name for it. They did South Central Rain was the second song they did.
Which is one of the best
Yeah.
songs ever, period. Yes.
But Letterman asked him what's the next song. They said, well, we don't have, it's too new. We don't have a
We
name
just
for
wrote
it
it.
yet.
Yeah.
Pretty ballsy for a young band that's just come out of nowhere and is on this super hip national television show.
Yeah, they do one of their singles, but no, do they do both singles? No, they just do a song they just wrote the other day that isn't even on an album yet or been recorded yet.
And thank God they didn't have Letterman's band playing behind them too. It was just the four of them. It's
Yeah.
Like, I kind of wonder if Paul Schaefer and the World's Most Dangerous Band was planning on augmenting the group, and they were like, no, we're not doing that.
And you know what? That's a good point, because REM are one of those bands that it's always been these four guys. They're like U2. They're like, there's bands out there where they've, like you said, they shared the royalties. They are a band, and every one of them is as important as the other.
So it came down to 4 albums for me, picking one of 4. And the reason this one won out over the others is what you mentioned. I mean, every song is and honestly, 8 or 9 of them could have been the song choice for me.
Yes.
Radio Free Europe, Pilgrimage, Shaking Through, Catapult,
Laughing, Moral Kiosk. I love all these songs.
I even like We Walk. I know you don't care for the last few songs of the record, but Shaking Through. Oh, all just wonderful. Could have been single releases.
Yeah.
So Mike mentioned this, we tend to lean more toward the stuff that we liked contemporarily when we're making choices. Now, I would have been utterly unaware of REM. I did not know this band existed in 1983. I think it would be a couple of years before I even knew about them. I remember the first song I heard was off their third record, Fables of Reconstruction.
Yeah, the first song I remember hearing is Can't Get There From Here, and I remember seeing the video on like 120 Minutes or one of those shows. Yeah, Cutting Edge.
Same here. So I knew nothing about REM at this time. But the album at the time, for me, would have been Synchronicity, the Police's final record. And there's basically one reason why that lost out.
Could it be
Mother? Could it be Mother? It's a brilliant record, but then you've got Mother, and it just breaks the flow, and it's just, God, why did
Mother is just like a middle finger right in your face, I agree totally with that. And I think the thing too is that between the two albums, you have REM, this is their debut album. They're just starting out, and they have a huge career ahead of them. And you have the Police with Synchronicity. This is their last album, although we didn't know that in 1983, but they're just like coming to a culmination there and like ending. And there's definitely a difference in attitude as far as the two albums go.
Has a band ever gone out on as big a high as the Police? I don't think so. I mean, that record was massive.
Yeah. What do you think, Mike? Is that the biggest band that's broken up and just been done?
Probably. I don't know.
Well, maybe the Beatles.
Yeah, but Let It Be was the last thing that came out, right?
But Let It Be wasn't the last album recorded. Abbey Road was, and that was one of their best albums. So I think between the Beatles and the Police, that's it.
So, the 4 albums for me would have been those two, U2's War, and then the other one would be the album I believe Mike is going to choose for his album of the year.
And that is...
Unless he's changed his mind on us again.
I think you're talking about Talking Heads Speaking in Tongues.
Yes.
Which REM was, up there, and it was like, but then I was told, well, you've got that one. So I had to go. And really it got down to the Talking Heads, Speaking in Tongues, and the Police Synchronicity. And when it comes down to Talking Heads, Speaking in Tongues, Police Synchronicity, and REM, Murmur, I was listening to those. I remember watching that David Letterman show
When
with
REM
them
was
on
on.
it. Yes. But the Talking Heads, Speaking in Tongues is the one that still holds up along with REM. That's where the Police Synchronicity doesn't hold up for me. I've heard it so much, and
That's a
it's
big problem
so
with Synchronicity, is it the singles were so
so
overplayed.
overplayed
Yeah.
that I can do with not listening to it ever again. But I remember at the time I loved it. And in fact, I probably liked it more than the Talking Heads, who I liked, but I was still trying to figure out how to wear the Talking Heads
Had
the
you
best
liked
way I
their
could.
previous albums? Like, had you
Yeah,
listened to them? I guess we talked about this because you did Once in a Lifetime as one of your
yes,
songs of the
yeah.
year.
But Speaking in Tongues was a departure from what they had been doing. And in some ways, Burning Down the House, which could be also the top single for me for the year. One of the reasons it isn't is because it got overplayed so much. I mean, it was on almost every 10 minutes. It would be on
It was
MTV.
on
It would,
MTV all the time. Yeah.
yeah. And
But it was a cool video. I liked the video. And I think it was definitely one of those that, yes, it was way overplayed, but I'd rather hear that song still than I'd rather hear Every Breath You Take, you
yeah.
know?
But but the thing that I loved about it was you talked earlier about how 83, that's where a lot of albums just fall apart, is the synths, the drum machines. It just makes a lot of songs and especially albums sound,
Dated, and it ruins them.
yeah. And where Speaking in Tongues was bringing in a bunch of musical styles and getting back to kind of roots, not just, Southern roots and gospel and early Southern rock, but also bringing in funk and African rhythms. And it wasn't just the four of them, it was also 10 musicians behind them on most of the tracks.
They really opened up on this album and brought in all the styles that they kind of had been tinkering with a little here and there.
Yeah, and the songs and the lyrics, it's not as out there as what the previous two albums were, but it's still quirky enough. This Must Be the Place is another great song off of
I
it.
love
And
that song so much.
yeah, and Girlfriend is Better.
Burning
Is
Down the House was probably their biggest hit too, right?
It
Yeah,
was.
it
It
was,
was.
yeah.
Yeah.
It,
So they also had like a huge hit single from this
yep,
album.
yep. But I remember that album coming out, and like I said, the first time I listened to it, I was like, well, this is different. I don't know if I really like it. I like it, but it was one of those albums that I played over and over on my drive to the UW every morning and on the way home. So I listened to it quite a bit, and it just kept on growing on me. And I still enjoy listening to it, and that's why in the end I picked that as my album of the year.
There is not one Talking Heads album that I've listened to that has not taken time for me to like it. The two albums before this were more challenging, but this album I definitely had to listen to a lot before I could say that I liked it.
Contemporarily, this would have been my introduction to the Talking Heads. I don't think I was aware of them before this record came out, and Burning Down the House would have been the first song to enter my
Yeah,
orbit.
me too.
So, I mean, I don't remember Once in a Lifetime, or I don't remember their cover of Al Green. I didn't care for Burning Down the House, but like you said, it was played a lot. And over time, it started to sink in. It just took a while. I kind of think I didn't really know how to listen to groove music properly at this age. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But now listening to it, what I hear is, so the individual songs aren't as good or as powerful as the ones on Remain in Light, but it's the
Mhm.
album as a whole
Correct.
is what I wanted Remain in Light to be, which is sticking with these incredible groove tracks start to finish instead of veering off into this ambient Brian Eno stuff on side
Mhm.
Yeah.
2. So this album keeps the party going from start to finish, and there's still killer grooves on it. I think Making Flippy Floppy is probably,
Yep.
for me, the first 2 tracks. And then Swamp, I would have heard Swamp in Risky Business. Talk about movies that came out in '83. That was a pretty significant one for me. That was the first rated R movie for me. But yeah, they used Swamp, and it was used well in the movie, as all the music was in that movie. It was great use of music in Risky Business. But yeah, so I would not have been a Talking Heads fan at this point. I mean, Burning Down the House, when I first started hearing it, didn't like it. And then it was like, it's okay. You know, it just took a long time to get it, I think. I just didn't really understand the music so much.
Mhm.
That's how I feel about all of their albums. But this one, Burning Down the House, I actually have always liked. Like, that's a
Yeah.
song that I just got right away.
Yeah. I didn't appreciate the band until I got to college. Let's just say that.
I didn't appreciate the Talking Heads until about 3 years ago.
Oh,
It took me a really long time. I would say that my biggest complaint about this album, it's the same one I had with 1999 and English Settlement. The songs are too long. Every song on this album is over 4 minutes long, some are 5, and it just kind of has that sense to it where they already said everything they want to say and they could have ended it a minute before, because a lot of it's repetitive, like they already did the hook, the riff, and then it just kind of keeps going, and I
Mhm.
get tired of it.
This is where I need to chime in for the CD nerds. There's 2 different versions of the record. One with longer versions of several songs. So like
Oh,
the original CD, which came out on Sire, which is Warner Electra Atlantic, the early CD pressings that are now collectible that were printed in Japan and Germany had the normal length versions. And then there was another version that came out later that had extended versions of like 5 tracks on CD.
well, I don't know. I'm just listening to whatever one is on Spotify. I have no idea, but I just feel like they're all too long. So maybe
I,
that's the extended version.
I think it's a case where you could probably speak more authoritatively on this, Mike. The vinyl record had the original length versions, and then the cassette version had
Yes.
the longer versions on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then when they initially came out on CD, it was the vinyl version, and then the later pressing of the CD had the cassette version.
Well, maybe I need to find the vinyl version, because I was definitely thinking, okay, this is kind of the same thing I was feeling with 1999. These songs are too long. And it's mostly because they just kind of go on doing the same thing, over and over again.
No, it's groove music. Now, when I finally started getting Talking Heads and appreciating them, it was in college, and that would have been when what's the album with Road to Nowhere? Drawing a blank here. What's
Little
the
Creatures.
Little Creatures?
Yeah, little.
Yeah.
That would have been my breakthrough with Talking Heads. And I really didn't get into the more groove oriented stuff like Remain in Light and Speaking in Tongues until later. It was the more song oriented Talking Heads that I first
Yep.
enjoyed. Now it's the opposite. I like the groove stuff, and I don't think Little Creatures has aged all that well.
Stop Making Sense is when I became the most aware of them, when the movie
Well,
came out.
you couldn't get away from it on MTV, and I got so
Yeah.
sick of it.
I originally bought this on vinyl, and not only did I buy it on vinyl, but I bought the European version that was in a clear plastic
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
case.
Robert Rauschenberg,
with-
right? Yeah.
Yeah, with Robert Rauschenberg artwork. I was in graphic design at the UW, and so it was like, oh, this is so cool.
No longer have it?
I think I still have it. I think I do someplace. Although the plastic hasn't held up all that well through the years. It's hard to find copies where the plastic hasn't hardened and
Oh,
yellowed.
it kind of breaks down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am glad you chose this album, because it did force me to listen to it a lot more and really give it more of a chance. I actually really like it now. I've always loved Burning Down the House. This Must Be the Place. I love this song. And I feel like that one has really gotten more attention. Like, younger people seem to know that song now. And I don't remember it from the time.
Got to be a TikTok thing. Yeah.
Oh, and Swamp. I mean, I do know Swamp. And I didn't
Mhm.
remember that was in Risky Business, but maybe that's where I've heard it, because I'm like, I know I've heard that song. Like that.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yes. No, very cool.
Yeah. Love that.
All right, runners up for 1983. Mike
Yeah.
already said he had a list of 350 songs. I'm begging you, Mike, to slim it down a little bit for some of
Yes.
your runners up here. We'll let you start.
Okay, so I already talked about the call. The walls came down. One of the groups that came out with an album that almost made it on my top albums was Tears for Fears with The Hurting. And there's 3 songs on it that are amazing: Mad World Change and Pale Shelter.
Yeah, I
Those
love
are
all those
all
songs.
great songs. U2 War, up there in good albums, but that album hasn't held up for me as well as, when it first came out.
It's their hardest rocking album, I think.
Yeah, Two Hearts Beat as One and New Year's Day. New Year's Day, I forgot how strong that track is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's already earned a place on the playlists.
Then the Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams Are Made of This
Also on the
was,
playlist already. We're
yeah.
talking about
Mhm.
songs we haven't already talked about, Mike. You're
Yes.
treading old ground here.
Okay. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Pride and Joy,
There we go.
his first album. That album was just amazing. I mean,
That's the Texas Flood album.
yeah, it was really the first time since like Hendrix that the instrument became part of the person.
And helped spur a blues renaissance in the 80s, too.
Yes, yeah.
And he had worked with David Bowie on Let's Dance, right before that album came out. And actually, I've never been a fan of blues. I've never been a fan of Stevie Ray Vaughan's, but I listened to that album a couple times and it's really good. Like it
Oh, yeah.
actually did grab me. Like I was like, wow, this is a great album. And I agree, Mike, it's that whole feeling of it's like a part of him, that guitar,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you don't get that very often. That's a special
No.
thing.
One of the songs and groups I wasn't into at the time, that in reviewing songs and kind of touching back to that, when listening to it, it is unencumbered by drum machines and synths. It gets back to really good vocals and just a solid band backing, is Culture Club's Church of the Poison Mind.
That was my first favorite Culture Club song.
Such a good song.
Yeah.
With the female backing vocals and
Yeah, it sounds like a Motown,
Yep.
a really great Motown song. And I rediscovered how good that song is.
And what a great singer Boy George was.
Yes.
And still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were a couple heavy metal groups and albums. Metallica, Seek and Destroy still holds up to this day.
Yep. Their first
Iron
record,
Maiden.
Kill 'Em All, comes out in 83.
Yep.
That's a killer record.
Yeah, and that is one that I didn't listen to as much when it first came out. I had a bunch of friends that were into it, mostly younger friends. And Iron Maiden's The Trooper is a
Mhm.
great
Love that
metal
song.
thing. Yeah. The Pretenders' Middle of the Road, that is a great song.
The single came out in 83, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Woo, woo, woo. There's a hook for you.
Yeah.
Yep. Getting back to the kind of political, kind of unrest songs, 2 of them that I think hold up really well and are in my top singles are the Rolling Stones' Under Cover of the Night. Jagger's vocals on that, it's some of his best work, especially in the 80s. Then Eddie Grant's Electric Avenue.
I love that song.
Didn't love it at the time. Love it now.
Yeah.
Always loved it. Still do.
Love his voice.
Yeah.
Love
Yes.
that voice.
Yeah. And the effects and everything that back then I was kind of turned off by, it isn't dated sounding.
Yeah.
The wow,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
the weird synth stuff and the
Yeah.
sound
Yep.
modulation and stuff is really
Yep.
cool on that. Yeah.
And then the other songs that got into that kind of street funk rap call and response that I really like from that era is Captain Sensible's What? WOT.
I say, Captain? I say, what?
Says what? and Malcolm McLaren's Buffalo Gals.
Yes.
Both are kind of similar. What's
Buffalo
strange
Gals
is
go
they're
round
both
and
from
round.
English. they're from British people trying to do American stuff, but they both
Well, I mean, Malcolm
hold up.
McLaurin's album is South African. I mean, that's where
Yes,
that's coming from. That's South African music that he
but
was using.
the start of the song is actually a radio DJ from Chicago, a soul R&B DJ. And then I do have to mention that it was pretty much the start of the Cocteau Twins, and Sugar Hiccup came out, and that's a great song. If you've never listened to Cocteau Twins, it's a good jumping off point.
I really tried to listen to because their first album came out in '83, and I
Yep.
just couldn't get into it.
I like it.
And so there it is.
Cheryl, you're runners up for 83.
Songs, Depeche Mode, Everything Counts. Always one of my favorite songs and still is. Also, The Cure, Love Cats, Let's Go to Bed, and The Walk were standalone singles they released in '83 that were now kind of like starting a whole new era for them, coming off Pornography, which is one of their bleakest, darkest albums, and coming out with something that is the most poppy thing they probably will ever do with the Love Cats. I've always loved those three songs. Keep Feeling Fascination by the Human League, another one of those synth holdovers that I still really like. There's a few older bands like Paul Simon, Hearts and Bones. Love that song. It's a beautiful song.
Just started listening to that record for the first time, and that's on my list too.
Love the song. The album, it's a little tough to wade through. I think it's one of his best albums, really, but you have to give it a lot of time.
Yeah, was not a big seller.
No, but that song, amazing. Robert Plant, In the Mood, with Phil Collins drumming on that album, producing that album too, I believe.
Great atmospheric rock song. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think his best solo song. I know that Mike hates the song, but I still have a place in my heart for Mr. Roboto. Sticks. I know we did a whole show on Prague. I don't even think we talked about that one. It's the cheesiest thing ever. I realize that, but I still really like it. Brian Adams, Cuts Like a Knife.
Yep, on my list too.
Probably my favorite song of his, came off his debut album. I had Blister in the Sun in there too that Mike chose. I think that's pretty much it for songs that were in the running for me. For albums, it is interesting to me that 1983, really all of the albums that I had in my running for album of the year, none of them are synth based or have any synths on them at all, maybe. The one I chose, Big Country, U2 War was definitely in my top 5. REM Murmur. Also, well, this does have synths on, I guess, but the band itself doesn't, it's not a synth band, but The Police, Synchronicity.
We were all pretty locked in on albums. I mean, we
Pretty
all had the
much,
same
yeah.
kind of the same podium as far as albums are concerned.
Yeah. So those were, like you guys, those were the ones that were in the top running for me. And like I said, I could have chose Murmur just as easily as I could have chose In a Big Country.
I think the same applies to Mike.
Yes.
We've got the last Duran Duran album of the original albums of the original band, Seven and the Ragged Tiger. I love the Reflex. I know you don't like it, Matt, but that album just is so lacking hooks like the first two albums were. They're coming from a much more sophisticated kind of dark place, and it just doesn't work for them like their early stuff did for me. But I still had to think about it because I was a big Duran Duran. This is probably the height of my Duran Duran fandom, was really 1984. There's a lot of albums that I was going back and listening to, like John Cougar Mellencamp, which was an album that, at the time I wasn't into, but this is a really good album. I knew that all the singles were great, but the album tracks are really good.
I think, like me, you have to appreciate the sound of those albums in comparison to what was coming out at the time. They sounded
Yes.
great. They just so punchy and rocking,
And real. And that's the thing
Yeah.
that I feel like all the albums that I'm really gravitating to from this year actually have an organic sound to them. And, we're really getting away. There's still a lot of synth bands out there, but the only bands that I really like still that are consistently putting out good stuff from this time are, to me, Depeche Mode and New Order. A lot of it is just kind of like fleeting. I don't need to listen to it now. One that I really didn't care about at all at the time, but now have grown to really appreciate is Wham's first album, Fantastic, which is, you can't take it too seriously. You just have to listen to it and enjoy it. And George Michael's vocals were great, always will be, always were. It's just a fun album. I feel like every year that we've done for the podcast, there's been a few things that I just knew nothing about, at all in the time. And I've gone back and listened to now and really have just become something that I just have grown to appreciate so much. And one of those is the Go Betweens. It's actually their second
Yep.
album before Hollywood. They're an Australian band. They have that kind of 60s psychedelic pop sound to them. And this has been kind of like a big mind opening thing to me too, because they have a female drummer. Her name's Lindy Morrison. And, at the time, this was something that was very unusual, especially for a band that wasn't an all female band like the Go Go's or the Raincoats or what, she's a drummer with three guys. And I love this album so much. And once again, you have a very stripped down sound with just guitars, bass, drums, vocals. You don't have synthesizers. It's a very organic sound. So I'm loving this album. The other one that was a big revelation for me that I love the Haircut 100 album from 82, but Nick Hayward has a solo album that came out in 83 called North of a Miracle, which is just as good or maybe even
Mm-hmm.
better than that album. If you like Haircut 100 at all, if you like Love Plus One, even just that song, check out his solo album from 83 because it is great. You've got the punchy horns and his warm, expressive vocals that just really make it this incredible album. So I am pleasantly surprised to find that there are so many albums from 83 that don't sound dated, that don't have that drum machine or overly produced or too many synths, taking over. There's just a lot of stuff that's still great now.
Yeah, I agree. I also had just remembered one album I forgot to mention that when I went into this, I thought was going to be my top album of the year, possibly. And I've forgotten about it because I listened to early on when I was listening to albums from 1983. I listened to it again. And it was like it had the problem that Cheryl brought up where the songs are just too long. XTC's Mummer, which
Yeah.
is a really good album.
It has some of my favorite songs of theirs on it.
Yeah,
Love on a Farm Boy's Wages.
yep. Great Fire is a great song. Funk Pop and Roll. Funk Pop and Roll is probably one of the best last songs on an album.
Yeah.
And it's so different
Well, it's
from
one of the
the rest of
great
it.
songs about the music business too.
Yes, yeah. And In Loving Memory of a Name,
Yeah,
it
it's a
is
beautiful song. Yeah.
it's instrumentally layered. There's just so much going on.
This is their first record they released when they became a studio only
Yeah.
concern. Yeah.
Yep. But the hooks in the songs, they just seem to go on, even though most of the songs are still, 4 to 5 minutes long and some under 4. They seem longer than that.
Yeah, I've been on board the XTC train since freshman year of college, and that's an album I just haven't listened to very much. Kind of giving it short shrift.
I do think it has great songs on it, but I
Yeah.
think you're right. Overall, as an album, it just doesn't hold interest all
Yeah.
the way through. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember thinking, oh, it's Murmur and Mummer. 83 is Murmur and Mummer.
I kind of forgot about Genesis self-titled. That album was up there too for consideration for album.
Yeah, me too. And actually, I kind of forgot too that 90125 was
Right,
also
yeah.
up there too for
Yes.
me for consideration. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to rattle through my list alphabetical order here. We start with Alabama's Dixieland Delight. I don't love a lot of their music, but this is a great song. And it really harkens back to kind of 70s style Southern rock kind of jam song.
They were another crossover country,
Yeah, very popular where I grew up. Black Uru, What is Life? Great kind of electro reggae song from 83. Here's a band that I'm starting to slip and fall down the rabbit hole. Blue Oyster Cult, Take Me Away. Really cool song from 83. Billy Bragg's A New England, later covered by Kirsty
Mm-hmm.
McCall beautifully. Jackson Browne, Lawyers in Love, song that I
Yeah.
liked a lot at the time. And the album is good. It's a really good album. I really haven't explored his catalog, honestly. I mean,
He's a tough one to me. I
yeah,
feel like the stuff that I've given enough time, like his first album, it is great, but it doesn't pull you in right away. You have to give it time.
yeah.
And I think all of his catalog is kind of like that.
Buckwheat Zydeco, Zydeco Boogaloo, uh, Atomic Dog, George Clinton. There's a party classic. Came out in 83.
Yep.
We'll talk more about this in 84, but the first release of Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood came out toward the end of 1983, but really they'd be more 1984.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. They take over 1984,
Yep.
I feel like.
Again, country and hip hop rather unrepresented on our show so far. I'm trying, but I just wasn't into either genre at the time. So, like I said, we leaned toward the stuff we were into at the time. But White Lines, Don't Do It
Yes.
by
Love it.
Grandmaster and Melly Mel.
And I
Uh,
love Liquid Liquid, the song that they took to make that song.
yep. Mike already mentioned Electric Avenue. We already talked about this in a disparaging way. Heart's album that year, Passion Works, is really just a horrible production sound, particularly the drums, but beautiful power ballad called Allies, which was a minor hit for them that year. Love
There's
that.
another good song on that album too.
There's
The
two
other
good.
hit.
There's two
Yeah.
good songs. Yeah, the singles are good. The rest of the album is not good. Husker Du, Metal Circus came out in '83. Real World off of that. Human Nature, which would be my next choice off of Thriller. We put Billie Jean on the playlist, but Human Nature, beautiful ballad. Billy Joel's An Innocent Man, two great singles off of that. Uptown Girl, like a whole bunch of singles off of that record.
That's another one I went back and listened to with more discerning ears, and it's a really good album.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, it's definitely a throwback, and he's just having fun. It's one of those I'm in love with Christy Lee, and I'm going to show the world. But it actually held up better than I expected it to.
Yeah, it's kind of a nostalgia exercise on his
Yeah.
part, but I think it's a superior album to the preceding One Nylon Curtain as a whole, even though the best songs on Nylon Curtain are great.
Yeah, like Pressure.
Elton John's record that year, he kind of had a bounce back album in '83, and I liked the album a lot more than I expected to. Nothing that would contend for album of the year, but that was too low for Zero.
I'm Still Standing. That is a great song. It
Yep, and
still is.
I guess that's why they call it the blues. Would have been my choice, but there's some really good album tracks on there too. I think that's an album that deserves more listens. This one I may go back and replace Kenny and Dolly with on the playlist, but not a lot of people are going to know this song. They'll know the band for one song. They were a huge one-hit wonder, but Katrina and the Waves. If you've never listened to their first two records, there is tons of
Yes.
gold on those records. And Brown Eyed Son is one of those rare songs that would
Yep.
guarantee to get me on the dance floor if anybody played it at a club or anything. Love that song.
Kimberly Rue.
From the Soft Boys, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Greg Kihn Band, Jeopardy. That's just a really
No.
killer, nasty groove on the. Oh, Mike, you don't like that song, huh?
I like Weird Al's version. I lost on Jeopardy.
Laughing Clowns, Eternally Yours. That's getting pretty obscure, but that was Ed Cooper's band after he left the Saints. Kirsty McCall with Terry, which is a
Yep.
non-album single. I feel like doing a whole episode on Kirsty McCall. What a tragic loss
Yes.
to music, and not only her death, but the fact that she recorded so little while she was alive. I mean, so talented, such a gifted singer-songwriter. Bob Marley and the Wailers, Buffalo Soldier.
Yeah, that was a posthumous release, and that's one of his best songs, I think.
Yeah, I
I've
agree.
always loved it.
You already mentioned John Mellencamp, Pink Houses off of Uh-huh. All his singles were killer.
Yeah.
Men at Work, we had one song on the playlist, Overkill, but It's a Mistake would have been my favorite
Mhm.
song off that record at the time. I think Overkill has grown in esteem over the years, and most people would say that is probably their greatest song. Safety Dance by Men Without Hats. I think that's one that could potentially carry over into '84. The Plimsolls put out an album, Everywhere at Once, 1983. How Long Will It Take? Really cool song on that record.
Mhm.
We talked about Quiet Riot when we did our glam metal episode. Come on, Feel the Noise. Obviously, that was big in high school at the time. We didn't end up putting any Synchronicity songs on the playlist. Both Cheryl and I like Synchronicity 2 a lot. I just felt like it was too dark and depressing for a general
I do love that
crowd.
song
Yeah.
though.
But King of Pain, also a great single. And I love the groove on Miss Gradenko. Cheryl, you're not as high on that song as I am.
I don't know, it's okay, but it just kind of well, I mean, it's a Stuart Copeland song and it sounds like a Stuart Copeland song. It's like Clark Kent. To me, it's kind of one of those things that pulls that album down from being a 5-star album,
Oh,
really,
I
because it's
know.
just like it's not
Totally
as good as the
disagree.
other stuff.
Totally disagree. The Replacements, Hootenanny, Within Your Reach, really cool song. Used the drum machine, memorably used in the movie Say Anything. Here's a song that, again, I may go back and change my mind and put it on, but All Night Long, Lionel Richie. I mean, undeniable, great single and a huge smash hit for him.
An amazing guitar solo at the end by Steve Lukather.
Yes, yes.
That whole album I was really into at the time. I remember I had it on cassette and I loved that album.
Already mentioned Kenny Rogers' duet with Sheena Easton. We've got tonight. You already mentioned Hearts and Bones, Paul Simon. The Soft Boys, Rock and Roll Toilet off of Invisible Hits. My favorite Soft Boys album is not Underwater Moonlight. It's the Invisible Hits album. I love that record.
Which is just like a bunch of leftovers, right? That were
Yeah,
never
just
on
kind
an
of
album.
strays.
Yeah.
It didn't come out until 83, but it was stuff that was recorded earlier. Split Ends, Message to My Girl, another great song by them in 83. Richard Thompson from the Hand of Kindness album, Tear Stained Letter, incorporating a Cajun New Orleans feel to it. Here's something we haven't mentioned too. U2, obviously, we talked a lot about in the early part of our run in 83, but at the end of 83, their live album or their mini LP, Under a Blood Red Sky, comes out at the end of 83. And the live version of the Electric Company or Electrico on that is my favorite track.
And that's actually what really sparked me to become a big U2 fan, was seeing that on Night Flight. I think they were showing it. And
Yep.
that's what really blew me away, was watching that
Yep.
Under a Blood Red Sky
U2
live
live at Red Rocks. And then
video.
Mike, of course, sure aware of this. The original vinyl would have had the interpolation of Send in the Clowns, the Stephen Sondheim song, in that was later cut out because they got sued.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an album I just picked up recently and listened to for the first time, and an artist that I've never explored, but is a critical darling and a lot of people love, is Tom Waits in the Swordfish Trombones album in 83. It's a challenging listen, but I found it very intriguing and fascinating. I'm certainly going to explore it more. But the song 16 Shells from 30-06, I think that is a canonical blues number. That is a killer track.
I can't get into it, and I don't know if it's just that I can't
that song or him.
No, the whole album. I've listened to it several times.
Go directly to that song and crank it up. It's undeniable. It is.
Maybe it's because I'm not really a blues fan too,
Maybe.
and it just goes over my head.
Because there's a lot of weird stuff before that.
Yeah.
Then that song kicks in, and I'm like, okay, I'm into this for sure. Matthew Wilder, Break My Stride, one-hit wonder.
Yeah, that is a one-hit wonder for sure.
That song has lived on too.
It has. You hear it on commercials. Yeah.
And then ZZ Top. I figured Eliminator would be a challenger for Album of the Year. I found it a bit disappointing. I guess I expected more of it, but the singles are all fabulous, and Legs is an 83 single off of there.
They had the best videos.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it was Randy Newman's cousin was the video director for them.
Yeah, we already did a whole show about that. But Madonna's first album came out in 1983.
Borderline, almost certainly going to be on my list for 1984. And that's off the first record. So again, you got albums that come out at the end of a year, but really most of the sales take place the following year. So we're going to push Van Halen, we're going to push Madonna into 1984, and we'll be talking about them very soon when we get rolling with 1984. And hopefully we get rolling very soon. We need to get back on our regular schedule here.
The only reason we weren't was because of Mike. But now that we're kicking him out for the next episode, we don't need to go on his schedule anymore.
I've already got my preliminary list of songs for 84, Cheryl, so we can get cracking on this right away.
I don't, because up until today, I was still listening to records from 1983. I believe I have listened to probably about 200 albums from 1983. And
wow.
Are now on my radar that I'm glad I've been able to discover thanks to this podcast.
We have almost reached the peak of our mountain, which is going to be 85 and 86. But you could say 1984 is a peak in many ways because it was just a huge year for pop music, huge year for pop. And some of the most iconic songs and albums of the 80s came out in 84, whether it's Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen, you already mentioned Madonna. This is the year she exploded into worldwide prominence. Prince's Purple Rain comes out
Yes.
in 84. It's just a massive year for pop music.
It's exciting because this is the time where, we're still enjoying music too. And then we're going to see what happens in 85, 86, 87. But I am glad that we are getting out of the synth pop era.
Yes, but we're also getting into a period where a lot of the rock music was heavily synthesized and processed and
It's more about
yeah,
production at this point now,
right,
like
right.
overproduced. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I can almost guarantee we're going to be talking to Van Halen most of our first episode because that record comes out January 9th of 1984, and that's the
I
first
mean, it's
first
called
big one. Yeah.
1984, so
Yeah.
it should be the way that we bring in the year.
Lots of goodies to come in 1984 when we next get together. But thanks for Mike joining us and contributing his song, Blister in the Sun by Violent Femmes, and album Speaking in Tongues for his favorites of 1983. My album of the year is REM's Murmur. I also place Talk About the Passion, second single off the record, European release, as one of my song choices. And my final song choice, Kenny and Dolly duetting on Islands in the Stream. Cheryl's album of the year, we talked about several episodes ago, Big Country, The Crossing. So that'll do it for this episode of Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Mike.
We'll talk to you very soon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Take care.